Good evening, Steeler fans. Welcome to the Curtain Call podcast. Curtain Call podcast is brought to you by BehindTheSteelCurtain.com and the Behind the Steel Curtain family of podcasts. I'm your host, Jeffrey Benedict. I'm here with my co-host, Shannon White. Shannon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I woke up from a long nap and I'm ready to go.
All right. Got that good energy. We're here today. We're going to talk about DeMarvin Leal, and with us to talk about him is our special guest, Russell Gatlin from Good Bull Hunting, which is the SB Nation Texas A&M Aggies blog, if I'm correct there. Russell, how are you doing?
Hi, guys. No, I'm doing great. Always exciting to talk a little football.
All right. So DeMarvin Leal, one thing I want to ask you here is he had a big jump from his sophomore to junior year in college for his last season in statistics and impact on the field. Was he starting before then? Was he a rotational player? What explains his jump up in production his last season?
He was an impact player from his freshman year on. All 3 years, he had significant playing time. He's a 5-star recruit. He was one of the first big lands Jimbo got and Mike Elko got when that staff came to Texas A&M. And yeah, his numbers took a jump his senior year. But if you look at just tackles for loss and sacks, he had a handful his freshman and sophomore year as well. I think a lot of other pieces came around him this past season with some other playmakers, and it was too much for defenses. The front seven Texas A&M had last year was pretty special, and they were able to cause havoc, and I think that really helped Leal's numbers.
When you watched Leal going into that last year, his senior year, he was, considered like top 5, and projected as a first-round draft pick.
Right.
And
yeah, he
that a lot of people expected.
Right. We did too. And he tested terribly. And I have not got a reason why, I haven't heard anything injury wise, so I don't want to put that on him. I just know the combine and the pro day, even he did not test well. The measurables weren't there, but that kind of goes back to that, the pickle you find yourself as an NFL scout. Do you trust the tape, or do you, how do you weigh that with how a guy looks on pro day? And, he did have the issue with the arrest after the season with I think he had a little bit of marijuana on him, and he got picked up for that. But I don't think that's enough either, because he's always been a high character kid. He's never got in trouble off the field. I think he made one little mistake, and I wouldn't expect to hear anything off the field from him going forward. Like I said, the numbers were there. The kid is athletic as all get out. He's got the build for it. I just think the pro day and the combine really hurt his draft stock.
Now here, he came into Steelers training camp and he talked about he had put on weight and he was close to around 300 pounds, where at the combine, I believe he was around 280. Do you know where he played when he played in college football? Do you know which is more his natural weight?
He normally played with us 280, 285, but in Elko's defense, they used his versatility. He would play inside and outside. And so I think he kind of stayed flexible. I always thought he was really unselfish in that regard, because, his freshman and sophomore year, he might not have had the numbers that he did this last year, but he was opening up things for everybody else. He was a constant double team. The kid just, high motor kid to me, and he always, wherever he went, he drew attention. But as far as his playing weight in college, yeah, it would be more close to the 280 mark.
I've said from the beginning, he reminds me of a former Steeler, Lamar Woodley. And Woodley, they asked him to try to stay around 270 pounds because they played him on the edge. But watching from Texas A&M, the highlights this year, he started drawing some double teams and some extra attention where he come into his senior year with so much fanfare, and he opened up opportunities for his teammates. What did you see from that aspect?
Absolutely. Michael Clemens and Tyree Johnson both had great years. They both were pushing. I believe one had 7.5 sacks, one had 8.5 sacks, along with Leal's 8.5. Like I said, this front seven this year, they were fun to watch. Unfortunately, we had some injuries on the offensive side, so we didn't win as many games as I think, we would have liked, but the defense was a blast to watch. What those guys could do up front in the run game and putting pressure on the quarterback. That's why I alluded to it earlier. He's a very selfless player. He's a team first guy, and Mike Elko would move him around. He was inside and outside all 3 years he was here. And that position flex, I think, should carry on to the next level.
Now, he left after his junior year when we're seeing a lot of guys stay for that extra COVID year. We're seeing a lot of guys play 5 even. I think some players have played 6 seasons now of football. He left after his 3rd season. Was he at a point where really there was nothing more for him to learn in college, where staying another year would kind of just be stagnating? Or is he a guy who maybe left a little early and may need some time to develop in the NFL?
No, I don't think he needs the time to develop in the NFL. I really do think you guys potentially stole one here. I think he could be a contributor in year 1. And that's not the homer in me. We kind of talked a little before this started about Buddy Johnson. I love the kid, but I get it. I get how much playing time he got last year. He's going to have to work his way into it. And Buddy's a great young man, and he's a hard-nosed, downhill type guy. I think he fits perfect the Steeler mentality, But as far as DeMarvin, sure, he might have helped his stock coming back, but he's ready. And I think him slipping in the draft kind of caught him by surprise. The tools and the talent's there. He got drafted a little later than he wanted, but I really believe it's all going to work out.
It works out when you go to an organization like the Steelers with, their history and their culture, where I think he's going to be a good fit. I can't get past the versatility factor with him and the fact that you could actually, if he stays around 280 to 290, as you said, they used him in college, he could easily step out on the edge and give, Highsmith or somebody a break. And you could bring in another defensive lineman, and because he can set the edge, he's athletic enough to go out there. And I think that he's going to be a great fit with Brian Flores and the blitz package and the aggressive nature of his defense. Did you think he's a better interior pass rusher? Because I've read a lot of stuff that he lacks burst to complete the sack. He gets a lot of pressures, but he doesn't always complete the transaction. Did you see that when he was in school?
Yeah, I think it's a tough question. I do think he's a little better on the interior. He got labeled as a tweener, kind of in a negative light, but I don't see it that way. Maybe he lacks some of the bend around the edge to be an elite, edge rusher. But yeah, he can definitely collapse a pocket. His bull rush is nasty. And then once he has you, he'll set you up with that. And then he's got a nice little spin move inside. He'll swipe hard. He's got violent hands. I'm really bullish on the guy. I'm going to miss him. I wish he would have came back selfishly. But yeah, I agree. I think he's a little better on the inside, but he is so athletic. You can play games with him. You could twist him. You could move him out on the edge if you needed to. I just think the depth and the value you get for somebody like that, it's really a good pick.
So you mentioned a lot of stuff that he does here where he's unselfish. He sets up for other players. You've mentioned his athleticism. You just talked about his interior pass rush, his ability to set the edge on outside when he's outside lined up. What would you say is his skill set that he's best at? What does he bring to the field that is the biggest thing he's going to add to a defense?
Okay, this is kind of twofold to me. I don't know how familiar you are with Mike Elko. He just took the head coaching position at Duke, but before that, he was our defensive coordinator for 3 or 4 years. Before that, it was Notre Dame. The guy runs a pretty complex defense, And anybody that he coaches, they're smart football players. They get situational defense. You're going to love the way the kid gets football. Like, you're going to see him make the right play, not necessarily the flashy play. You're going to so for me, yeah, he's got all the tools to potentially have a really high ceiling. But the reason why I think he's going to be an immediate impact guy, he is a football guy. Like, put on the tape, watch him make the right play, the smart play consistently. He is like I said earlier, a team first guy. He's a football smart guy. Because, we've mentioned his skill set, and it's a little, you could see him play an edge or inside. And so maybe he's not a master of one. He's kind of like the jack of many trades. I just think the value there is his football IQ.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy who had scouted him, and he was saying that, if you try to put him on the edge for the Steelers edge guys, they got to be able to drop in coverage. And they said, he's not had a history of dropping into coverage. He hasn't been asked to do that.
Right.
And I guess it was kind of like when they, Albert Pujols, the first time he ever bunted, everybody's like, well, why are you having him bunt? That's not what you have him in there for. And I have not seen him dropping into coverage. Did he ever get an opportunity to do that?
Very little. It would be mainly like covering the flat, or, he was good in his perimeter defense. Like, if you go back and watch the Orange Bowl, for example, the QB and their running game, they had a really good zone option attack. He was great sideline to sideline. He would stretch that out. He would really neutralize the short passing game and the zone read type stuff. I know he had one interception in college, but he really wasn't asked to really drop much. And if I'm not mistaken, that one pick was like a batted ball situation. I wouldn't put it past him. It's just, like I said earlier, knowing where he's supposed to be, but the actual athletic ability to cover a back in the NFL might be tough.
Okay, we talked about his strengths. Outside of being asked to drop into coverage, what would you say is his weakness? Like, what his biggest drawback on the field?
I think he still has room to grow, just with some of the technical aspects. I've seen him grow and mature, but he's still, to me, he is such a raw athlete, and he's been asked to do multiple things, which is good to a degree, but I don't think he's really got a chance to hone in certain skill sets. He would work inside for a while, then he'd hop outside. And yeah, like I said, that's great, except, he's not necessarily just really working on some of those technical aspects of what it takes to be a defensive tackle day in, day out in the NFL, or, an edge rusher. I read some stuff that on the scouts that, made it sound like he would take plays off. I never really felt like that. I didn't feel like he was a lazy player. I always felt like when he was out there, he was going to, give everything he had, and they would try to rotate him in. So if anything, maybe he would get tired at times. But I think that was just the attacking nature of the defense. So they did try to rotate those guys in. So.
Okay.
Did you think that he is looking at him at the combine, and he doesn't seem to be extremely fit? I mean, we've had the Steelers have Alex Highsmith, who come in as a rookie, and he lacked a little bit of functional strength to hold the edge, and maybe a little bit of explosiveness off the snap. We come back his sophomore year last year, and he had improved greatly in both aspects. So you can improve that explosiveness, but he got ripped up to do it. I mean, you could tell he really focused on that. Based on what you know of Leal, do you think that's a possibility with him? Because looking at him, make a little more cut.
Yeah, I think it's, maybe that's the reason he put on some weight, is if he knew that the move inside was coming. I'm not sure. But he was asked to do multiple things here, and so I think he'd stay flexible. But everything you ever hear about the kid from his teammates and his coaches is, he's going to put in the work. and whatever is necessary, he's going to fill that role. So I would not be surprised to see him. That's why I'm really excited about the pick. I enjoy watching guys like that because I feel like, yeah, they can make an impact now, but in 2 or 3 years, I would not be shocked if he's flirting with Pro Bowl picks,
Sounds good.
We'll take it.
For Steeler fans listening at home, is there any plays or any specific game that stood out to you as being one that people could watch to really see the potential this kid carries? Any one game where he really just stood out?
He is a disruptor in most games. I'm trying to think I know the LSU game, pretty much the whole defensive line had their way. That was what was really impressive about Max Johnson, the fact he was still able to win that game, because I felt bad for him. He had got sacked about 12 times. Everybody, I felt like, had 2 or 3. But he always seemed to show up in big games. So the win against Alabama last year, he flashed. That Orange Bowl a few years ago against North Carolina, he was all over the place. And in that game, I felt like that was really an overview of who he is. He didn't have any sacks in the Orange Bowl. He didn't have any tackles for losses. He drew double teams all night. He did the little things all night. Like I said, he would string out Sam Howell when he was trying to get around the edge or do his own option. He's just one of those guys that's, to me, he can do it all. He can do the dirty work, or he could take over a game.
One of the biggest beneficiaries of that, as you mentioned earlier, was an undrafted free agent that the Steelers just signed, Tyree Johnson. I was shocked that Tyree wasn't drafted.
Yes.
Because I thought he would be a late round draft pick because of his pass rush forte and repertoire.
Yes.
And so when I realized he went undrafted, I started looking at some of the evaluations trying to figure out why. Because they all say he's got excellent get off and pass rush ability, quick twitch. But they say he leaves much to be desired in the running game. Now, I'm not that familiar with him. And so what is your impression? Is that really a weakness for Tyree Johnson?
I think it's a pretty accurate description. He can be an absolutely disruptive pass rush force. He does. He has the bend and the quick twitch that Leal doesn't off the edge. But he's kind of a specialist that way. He would make plays in the run game, but yeah, he definitely has room to grow there. And then I think his overall body of work, he really had a great year last year, but before that, he had struggled with a few little injuries or just consistency staying on the field. So, yeah, who knows what he'll turn out to be, but he definitely has potential. If there's a role for him, even if it's like a third down specialist type situation, get after the quarterback package, because he definitely can cause some trouble.
I want to ask you a kind of an off the wall question here. The Steelers last year drafted Dan Moore Jr. He played from Texas A&M, and he ended up starting the whole season for the Steelers. Played a lot, had struggles, had good games. Did you get a chance to watch the matchup between the Steelers and the Browns where Dan Moore Jr. was blocking Myles Garrett? Did you get to see any of that?
Honestly, no. That would be a fun one to watch through an Aggie lens, for sure. But no, that doesn't, man. The Maroon Goons last year, that was a great group. Yeah, we definitely miss more. But yeah, he's just going to keep growing, man. He's a mauler.
Yeah, we enjoyed watching him push people around. He did that really well.
For sure.
Maybe not the most refined, but man, he's a brute.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the nickname stuck for a reason. They were just some goons, man. They would push some folks around.
Hey, you mentioned Buddy Johnson earlier, and we talked about him before we started the show. I'm really intrigued by Buddy. The one thing you said is he's an attacking downhill linebacker, and that's what I love in a Steelers linebacker. That was something that the Steelers lacked last year. They had guys who were more cerebral. For whatever reason, Bush used to be more of an attacking linebacker, but trying to come back from that knee injury, I think he lost a little confidence in his push-off. But Buddy, when he did get to play, and it wasn't very much, but in preseason and then a little bit against the Minnesota Vikings, he showed real instincts in attacking the hole, and he seems like he's a really solid tackler. Is that consistent with what you saw in college?
Absolutely. He's a thumper. And the instincts are there. I think he's a smart player. He'll when he tackles you, you're going to remember. He had a kind of a career-defining moment his senior year at A&M. Whenever that was a tight game with Florida, and we needed to stop. He didn't just get the stop. He knocked the ball out and caused a fumble, and that turned the whole game, and we were able to upset him. But like I said, Buddy, I think I don't want it to be a knock. It's like modern day linebacker. Maybe he's not the perfect mold because he is so downhill and physical. And now, to have a linebacker that can cover and be multiple and I get it. The offenses have changed and got so explosive. I really do hope Buddy finds a way to stay on the field. If you could put him in the middle and let him do his thing and give him some protection on the back end, he could be a really solid contributor.
All right, Russell, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for talking with us. Before you head out, is there anything you want to plug? Let people know where they can read your work.
Oh, sure. Goodbullhunting.com. It's GB Hunting. That's the Twitter handle is @GB Hunting. Normally, I just write during the season. I'll do a scouting report on who A&M's playing, and then I'll do a film room recap after the fact. But there's a lot of talented contributors, and there's some fun stuff we do. We try not to stay too serious, but we cover the football too, and other sports for that matter. But yeah, it's a good group of guys. So if anybody's ever interested on up-and-coming Aggies that might be Pittsburgh Steelers one day, definitely check us out.
All right. Thank you, man. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, Russ. Nice beard, buddy.
Thanks. You too. It's good to meet you guys.
All right, Shannon. Where do you think DeMarvin Leal is going to fit in to this defensive line? Do you think he has space to be a contributor? And I just want to clarify before I answer, because we have right now word is they're expecting Stephon Tuitt to come back. Tyson Alualu re-signed. Cameron Hayward is still Cameron Hayward. And then behind them, we have Isaiah Loudermilk, who looked good last year. We've got Chris Wormley, who had 7 sacks. Montravius Adams came up and played really well for the Steelers. And at that point, that's 6 defensive linemen, and that's the number of linemen the Steelers usually carry on the roster. Right? So if you're just looking at a pure numbers game, DeMarvin Leal is potentially fighting for a roster spot, let alone getting snaps. And the Steelers, I mean, there's almost always injuries. But if everyone's healthy going into the season, how much room is there going to be for DeMarvin Leal to actually, have impact on this team?
Yeah, I thought the same thing on draft night. And I said, well, this is just a guy who is a tweener, and it's insurance in case Tuitt doesn't come back. And I thought, well, if they think Tuitt isn't coming back, they're going to ask him to gain 20 pounds and play it around 300 and give him minutes out there at the end. If not, I figured they would ask him to get some minutes at the end and some on the edge. Because, that way you have Watt, Highsmith, and Leal, and I think he can set a good edge and can get some pass rush, even if he isn't particularly bendy. I think he can get faster and get a better explosiveness, if they do ask him to go down a little bit in weight. But this first year, like you said, the way the numbers are looking, there's more of an opportunity at edge than there is on that defensive line. So I think that his versatility might help him make the squad and make a contribution. And of course, we're all hoping Tuitt comes back.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Hoping Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Alualu. Yeah. We're all hoping Stephon Tuitt and Tyson Alualu aren't just, on the roster and active, but they're back in form. Both of them with those. I mean, Tuitt missed an entire year with a knee injury and incredible personal tragedy. So that's, there's question marks there, and Leal certainly could have an opportunity to have a big role in this defense. What do you? I think it's interesting that we do have, with Tyree Johnson, we have 3 Aggies on this defense. We've had a couple of them that have played together here. Obviously, Buddy Johnson was playing behind DeMarvin Leal for a number of seasons. Do you think that holds an advantage for young guys trying to make their mark on the roster? Like Buddy Johnson's clearly going to be in his second year. DeMarvin Leal coming in fresh, when they can play with someone that they have multiple seasons of experience with, even if it's from a different system. Do you think that's an advantage, Shannon, or do you think that it's the NFL, it's a different defense, it's not going to carry over?
I think it's an advantage for quite a few reasons. Any of us in our workplace, if we go in and we have somebody that we worked with previous or went to school with, there's a compatibility we know, at least with one person. In this case, there's a couple of people that he'll know. And so you have somebody who's already went through that rookie year and that learning experience that he's familiar with, a friend probably. And so Buddy can offer him a lot of insights and say, you really need to focus on this. This is what, before it'd been Coach Butler, but now it's, Coach Austin and Coach Tomlin. This is what they're going to be looking at. And if they see that this playbook, because you know how the Steelers are, that if you don't know the playbook, for a while there, that's what kept Ulysses Gilbert III off the field. That
Yep.
Allen knew the playbook better. And Allen's a converted safety. It has no business in land because of his knowledge of the playbook. So I think there's a real advantage there that Buddy Johnson's already there and has went through this.
Sounds good. Now, there's some news moving off of DeMarvin Leal. There's some big news that the Steelers that dropped for the Steelers here, with basically confirmation that Omar Khan is going to be the next Steelers GM. How's that move strike you, Shannon? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was confused at first because, I always think of Khan as the cap guy. He's some really good work getting guys under contract and helping keep the Steelers team together, where they could have lost some guys in the past, and he figured out a way to make all that work. But I don't know how knowledgeable he is in the scouting department. But then they hired the I don't know how to say his last name, from the Eagles.
Yeah, Weidel?
Weidel. I think it's right. Weidel. To kind of take over. Really, they're replacing Colbert with a 2-headed monster. And then they brought in an assistant to Weidel with Sheldon White from the Detroit Lions. So I think they're, that shows you a lot what Hunt meant to Colbert, and the fact that Colbert leaves, Hunt probably will leave. I don't see how they're going to work that out. If like we talked about on Slack today, it's almost like he's gone, but they're replacing these 2 with 3.
Yeah. I find it interesting that Omar Khan joined the Steelers in 2001. 1 year after Kevin Colbert joined, and they've worked together that whole time, and then Kevin Colbert is stepping into the background. Omar Khan is stepping in. I've had my thought process has been going through several phases on this, but I've been thinking, with Kevin Colbert sticking around, it makes a lot of sense if he's sticking around to kind of mentor and be an advisor. With Omar Khan being the GM, there's not really a competition there, where if Kevin Colbert is taking that same role with a Brandon Hunt, who's been with the Steelers since 2010, when Kevin Colbert was named the GM and Brandon Hunt was put in charge of pro scouting, they've been doing this job. Like he's been in that scouting department. He knows how to run a scouting department. Colbert sticking around would be like, what is your role here? Like what is your job here? What is it about your job that Brandon Hunt needs help with? Whereas with Omar Khan, it makes more sense because Omar Khan isn't that side of the game.
Yeah, somebody shared a tweet about how many times Khan has been interviewed for a GM position. And, I think a lot of people looked at him like we did is a numbers guy, and that's why they wanted him. But they were concerned about, how strong he was on the scouting side. But Khan has been that like other teams besides the Steelers. And many times they've been like, man, I wish we had Khan because he would have figured out a way to make that work. We might not have lost this guy or that guy. And I think we kind of took it for granted as Steeler fans that he did some really good work there through the years. But, like you said, he has so much experience. And so that's going to help Waddle, or if I'm saying his name wrong, I apologize, but it's going to help him in his transition in. I kind of thought he might have an advantage where he is a Pittsburgh guy and he has some history with the team.
Now, the last couple of times we've seen a new GM for the Pittsburgh Steelers, their first couple of drafts have really shown up, have been majorly important drafts with some big time talent, some absolute stars coming through. But Kevin Colbert kind of went out with some really good additions. Obviously, Minkah Fitzpatrick was a trade, but I mean, anyone looks at the drafting of TJ Watt, that's an incredible pick. Obviously, the best player in that draft. Do you think there's a chance we could see that kind of new blood come in and have a few drafts where maybe the Steelers do better than they've been doing normally simply because there's new people in, or do you think that's kind of overblown?
I think it'll depend on how much influence Colbert still has. We know Mr. has a way he likes to do things. There's been a lot of talk today is about could the Steelers start trading back a little more? Could they be more aggressive, trading first round picks for proven established talent and some stuff that's not being in Colbert's comfort zone. I think with Khan coming in, I don't see that happening because I think he's going to be more apt to hold the status quo. Now, with White, they're going to lean on him as far as what kind of impact he'll have on that scouting and those decisions. But that's something that they could try to look at in becoming a little bit more modern, up to date, acquiring even future picks. Because what was it? The whole fourth round, I think the Baltimore Ravens had half of the picks or something. It was crazy. A lot of teams are depending on where they are in their development as a contender, they're starting players and current picks for future picks because they don't have too many openings on the roster. So hopefully the Steelers will get to that point.
Absolutely. Shannon, is there anyone you are really looking forward to seeing during OTAs? Anyone you're really looking forward to right now that could be getting a chance or might be flying under the radar that you're looking at with the Steelers and saying, this is my story for this OTA section? I believe we're about to wrap up this current one here a day or two. Is there any story from that you are really looking for? Anything you're really looking to take away from this OTA session?
Well, it would have easily been to it if he would have showed up, because that was the one I feel a lot better about the whole situation on the defense if we know something, and it's that they got to say, hey, you got to let us know, man. We can't do this. We can't go through this again, because they still have time to bring somebody else in, and maybe Hicks, some free agent like that, and get them acclimated. We can't wait till the last minute again and do another Joe Sherbert like they had to do last year. But as far as me, I guess I'm still, we just talked about him, but Buddy Johnson and Mark Robinson, I really want, even if it's only a few play game, because I just don't think that Jax and Bush is going to be able to hold up well. It is being the two main linebackers. If they do, they're still going to need somebody behind them. And I think that Buddy could play a real role there and being that downhill guy. I love Spillane. I know we all do. I mean, he is a hard-nosed guy, overachiever, but his limited athleticism limits his impact when he's trying to come up. He doesn't have that. I think he's a 4.7 something guy. These other guys we're talking about are 4.5, 4.6, and it makes a difference. And so to me it would be either one of them young inside linebackers.
All right, yeah, that's a good one to look at. I've of course been trying to watch all the stuff with the rookies, but with OTAs, like what really are you looking at? I loved in our Slack channel they showed the clip of Miles Jack and Devin Bush took reps back and forth, and we were kind of like I think it was Jeff Hartman and I were going back and forth being like, oh look, I think Devin Bush was slightly faster on that. He's clearly linebacker number one. Yeah. Just joking around. Yeah. But it is nice to see something on the field. But it's also kind of a reminder of just how far we are away from meaningful football. And yet we're desperate for literally anything on the field.
Hey, did you see Anthony McFarland?
I did not.
On the OTAs, the first of each quarterback hitting, it was just a little, in breaking route, but he had to push the linebacker off and then cut in. And first rep, he goes down. He slips and falls over his own feet, goes down. Everybody was talking about that. Said he still can't stand up.
Oh man. He's one of those guys I keep rooting for because you want to see that speed. You want to see that speed come to play on the field, and it just has not happened. But that's funny. Oh man. I found this entire offseason very, very interesting. There's so many storylines with the Steelers, so many new faces, old players moving on, questions about Tua and Alualu, the change of quarterback. You can't underrate that. This is the first real quarterback change we've had in almost 20 years. Is this the most exciting OTAs and early offseason we've had? Is this the most, potential roster battles and things and most important ones that we've had in a while? Or are there other years that you're sitting there you can think of that mirror this year or even more?
Well, as a fan since the 70s, this is different. At the end of the 70s and early 80s, again, it wasn't free agency. You've seen all the Steelers stars gradually grow old and fade away. So you never experience like this with Ben walking away and the team, a couple of good drafts and some smart free agency signings away from being a contender again. And then in the 90s, there was a couple of times that they felt like they got close. Lost in the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. But then, of course, all that, craziness around Neil O'Donnell and him leaving. And so you never had that feeling in the 90s. So basically, in my lifetime, let's say 50 years, I don't ever remember an offseason like this one.
Yeah, there's so much there. And yet, even with all that turnover, there's a lot of talent on this team, and there's a lot of hope that this team could be significantly improved. I mean, last year, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth injected some life into the offense. But even then, as rookies and an offense that didn't quite fit the, Ben Roethlisberger's last season, they didn't get used the best. There was the struggles on the offensive line, the injury to Dotson, the rotations at center. This team feels like there's a lot of potential here, and yet everywhere there's tons and tons of questions. How do you feel that that balance works out. Do you think that's kind of, it plays into it? There's so much unknown stuff that we can sit here and have pipe dreams and say, oh, wow, the Steelers could be really good if all these players, grow and turn out and they're really good. Or is this a team that really, in spite of all these question marks, has a real chance to be a significantly better team than they were last year?
Yeah, to me, this team, it's all how you look at it. I think that this is a rebuilding team with a lot of talent. Sometimes you start a rebuild and you're at the bottom. I mean, you're the Detroit Lions, let's say, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you have to rebuild a complete roster. And you might have one or two. This team has a lot of superstars, guys who really have superstar ability. When you use TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Harris has come out this in OTAs, and the guys are saying he looks bigger, but he looks faster. He looks more explosive. So he's put the work in. And give this guy an average line, please. If you give him an average line, he is going to show some people that he can be a dominant running back. I mean, he does things that guys his size shouldn't be able to do. So this team has a lot of a foundation to build on. And so I think that's how you have to look that they're not there yet, and they're in a tough division where everybody's is good or getting better. But the Steelers, you make a couple of smart moves, they're right there with them.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be a lot. There's a lot to look forward to this offseason, and it's going to be an exciting approach into 2022 this year to see what this team ends up being with what we can see right now.
GB, I know they said that Kendrick Green took snaps at center and at guard. And they're saying that he might be in the left guard competition with Kevin Dotson. And they said he looks bigger this year. Now, I see pictures of him. The only problem is you can really get bigger. You can put on muscle and mass, but you can't get longer.
Nope.
And his arms is not going to get any longer. And there's a maximum of how much on a little over 6'1" weight he can put on. To me, it's smoke and mirrors. I don't think that anybody thinks that Green is going to be the star. I think this is a kick in the butt for Dotson. It's a little motivation, some competition saying, we want you to focus. Because like I said all along, he is not the perfect fit for this new zone blocking scheme. Yeah, he could do it, but he's got to be willing to work on the fundamentals that he'll need to overcome, some of his shortcomings. And I believe that's why all this is going on with Kendrick Green. Because I really don't believe. I mean, you could slide Cole out to guard, and I'd believe it. And they got Dotson, but Green is not an option at guard. What do you think of?
I agree with you, Shannon. The Steelers, you go with Ramon Foster, David DeCastro, Matt Filer, Kevin Dotson, James Daniels. These are big dudes. The Steelers like big, brutal, brute force guards that can just maul people, right? Mm-hmm. They don't invest highly in tackles. They like athletic centers. And then in between, they like to have those guards that are just maulers, right? They're going to beat people up. Kevin Dotson's exactly that guy. He's exactly that guy. He may not be the best fit for Canada's system, but Canada's system, the outside zone part, but Canada's system still has a lot of inside runs, still has a lot of, run up the middle stuff going on in it. And that's Kevin Dotson. He made that, he makes your whole line look good. When he was there, oh man, Detroit in week 10 before Kevin Dotson went down, I think it was the week or the 2 weeks before that, that left side of the line, Dotson, what's his name on the outside? Dan Moore Jr. on at left tackle, and even Kendrick Green at center were just mauling people and just wreaking havoc in the run game. And I think it's easy to forget that when we know that they're not happy with the work Kevin Dotson is kind of putting in, or the work that they want him to put in that he's not doing, and think, well, then they'll replace him with someone new. But Yeah, I've said it before. I don't think Kendrick Green, if it's a real competition based on going in there and actually blocking and moving defenders off the ball, I don't think anyone on this roster can beat Kevin Dotson in that kind of a straight up competition. If it's simply Kevin Dotson can't do the whole playbook and so we can't play him, then I understand him being out. But if it's a competition of who can actually do the job, man, Kevin Dotson is going to be hard to get out of that position. And I was just running a film room on the Steelers on what's his name, Joe Haeg, for the Vertex. Dave and I are doing this week. And one of the things that stood out is he came in week 10. Dotson went down. Hassenauer came in at left guard. Trey Turner went down in that same game. BJ Finney was inactive and wouldn't play for quite a while for the Steelers again. And Kevin Dotson went down, and so Joe Haeg went in at right guard. Trey Turner went down. Joe Haeg went in at right guard for Trey Turner. Then week 11, Trey Turner's back. They started Hassenauer at left guard and Trey Turner at right guard because Haeg's their backup tackle. 20 snaps into the game, they're replacing Hassenauer with Haeg because Hassenauer can't get push in the run game. He's a center, and he's about the same size as Kendrick Green. And when you look at Hassenauer play center, he was doing the things that we want to see Kendrick Green get better at as a center, but when he moved to guard, he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it, and I think that says something about the NFL and the size limitation that, man, you can get away with that when you're in college. But when you're in the NFL, those defensive tackles, if you're undersized, man, you better be really special or they're gonna just manhandle you.
Yeah, I think that Cole is fundamentally. I've said on long. I think James Daniels could be a Pro Bowl center. I mean, he was great at Iowa. I think that the Steelers value him more at guard, but I think Mason Cole in this system, in Canada's system, and with what I've seen from him, I think he can really excel at center. And I might need another season as a backup, let's say, and maybe backup center, and maybe he can even fill in a guard a little bit. But I think he's going to have the same problem, like you said, that Hassenauer has. I just do not think you can be a full-time guard in the NFL with those arms that short. Somebody said they mentioned two other guys. Well, we're talking about two of all the guards in the NFL whose arms as short as them. There's always, the exception to the rule. But we're talking about this is the rule. And you hear guys 34, 35 in here. That's not what we're dealing with. So I think that Dotson will solidify that left guard. Last year when they said that the Steelers were not happy with his conditioning, I heard that they wasn't happy with his off-season training regimen because they had asked him to work on his footwork and some other things, whereas he worked more on his power. And they were frustrated that he was making some of the mistakes in year two that he was. And so the report of them being unhappy with him was accurate. It was just for the wrong reason. And I think that he might need a different kind of motivation. And I think that's why that you're seeing them calling it a competition between Dotson and Green. Because if it really is a competition, Dotson's going to win that.
Oh, yeah, they get to preseason games, and Dotson's in that. He's just going to throw people around until they give him the job. Like that's going to be his approach. And I think that's kind of the problem is his approach is, well, like, they're like, we need you to work on your footwork so you're more, reliable and you're better on these outside runs. And his thing is like, you know what? Instead of that, I'm just going to throw people around more. And that's kind of like the Steelers are kind of like, we like that, but we want you to learn these other things too.
Also.
All right, Shannon. Great show. Great being with you as always here on Wednesday nights. Shannon, let everyone know what you've got coming up and where they can read your stuff and listen to you.
Well, the only thing right now is working on another article, but my post today about Anthony Miller and how shocked I was last year when the Steelers was given all the slot reps to Ray McCloud when Miller is a better and more accomplished slot receiver with better hands. And I offered a possible explanation for that is the fact that Ben was comfortable with Ray. He knew Ray had a history with him, and he didn't know Miller. And, there's a comfort level there. A guy's going to break, and he's going to get to the spot. And I think last year, because of the line and everything else, he didn't want the any more changes than necessary. So hopefully this year, Miller will get a more real opportunity to show what he can do and maybe make the team. But that's out there. And other than that, I think it was a strong show, and it was great having Russell on as a guest and getting to talk about. We didn't just talk about Leal. We talked about Tyree Johnson. We talked about Buddy Johnson. So we covered a lot tonight. So I think it was a good show.
Yep. And as always, you can check out my stuff on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. I mentioned it. The Steelers Vertex is coming out, covering Joe Haeg and what he brings to the team as a very position versatile offensive lineman. So for all of us here Behind the Steel Curtain, thank you for listening. Keep listening to all of the Behind the Steel Curtain family of podcasts, and check out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers, as we go through the offseason and cover everything in the lead up to training camp, coming back to Latrobe again and St. Vincent. Everything for this offseason, Behind the Steel Curtain is your source for whatever you want to hear, all the different topics. As always, thanks for listening. Have a great week. Let's go Steelers.